Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very special guest, Mr. Kajan Johnson, who is a UFC fighter and trainer who is going to talk to us today about his experiences with a carnivore diet. Kajan, nice to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Blessing to be here.
Absolutely. So, for people who haven't come across you, don't know who you are, I'm sure there's a lot of people who do, but for those who don't, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I run a gym. I run a brick and mortar gym here in Burnaby, BC, 7759 Edmund Street. And yeah, we do a lot of things. We work with kids. We work with the schools and stuff, bring them in, like a lot of the hyperactive kids and the kids that have like problems in school and with teachers and stuff. We bring them in and we get them focused and we get them training and usually helps them a lot. We also produce fighters. So we produce recreational martial artists and we produce fighters. So I've got a few pros, I've got a bunch of amateurs that are on the come up, and then I've got a bunch of teenagers that are looking to be amateurs and pros in the future and eventually champions. Um,
Nice.
I fought for a long time. I was pro for like 18 years or something like that, something close to it.
Wow.
I turned pro in 2002. Yeah.
Mm,
So I started
nice.
fighting in my grade 12 year of high school, and I
Yeah.
just
Wow.
kept fighting over and over and over for years and years. Eventually made it to the UFC. I fought some pretty notable guys there. I fought the current lightweight champ, Islam Makhachev. I also fought the only dude to ever beat him, and I knocked that dude out. I
Yeah.
fought another one of his teammates, Rustam Khabilov. I fought him in Moscow like 5 weeks after I fought Islam. Um, so I got to really live out the dream, you know. I got to like travel around the world. I went to Japan, I fought in Manila, I fought in London, I fought in Moscow. In I just like live like a video game character, you know, like traveling around the world, fighting higher level bosses to get to the next guy, and next boss, and next boss. And it was really awesome. And now yeah, I'm running the gym and I'm building the next generation. And yeah, I'm actually toying with the idea of returning to fighting now
Oh.
that I have gone carnivore. And I like to prove the things that I'm telling people, right?
Hmm.
Like I've thought for a long time that there's some serious benefit to this diet. I have some questions about it still, but my experience has been very good with it, and I want to test it live. So I've been doing jujitsu competitions already, but I think I'm gonna come back and fight in all the different types of fighting and just try to smash everyone, all the sugar burners, just smash them. Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Um, so what brought you to a carnivore diet in the first place? How'd you find out about it?
Good question. So, my mom actually was the one that kind of discovered this.
Hmm.
Well, I'm sure she wasn't the one that discovered it, but she
Hmm.
stumbled across it in her own healing journey because after like 30 years of being a vegetarian, her body started freaking out and revolting, and she was having to do this big elimination diet and just take everything out. And it ended up with her being carnivore. And I'm like really close to my mom. We're really tight. We always have been, you know, typical mama's boy. And for a while there, I was getting really scared because she was getting really sick and like
Hmm.
she wasn't able to eat anything and she's getting skinny and she just like she looked like she was just getting really old really fast and it was really scary for me. And so um once she started coming out of it, like she started on this like I think first she went low carb and then she went ketogenic and then she went carnivore. And now like she's in her 60s. I don't remember exactly how old because she never tells me her actual age. She's in her 60s though, and she looks like 15 years younger. Like she looks younger than all my other friends, parents, and my most of my friends are younger than me because I'm in a young man sport, right?
Mm.
And she's running every day, she's sprinting, she's weightlifting, like her skin is like tightened up and it's glowing and she's gaining muscle, right? Whereas in your 60s, most people are losing muscle, most people are less mobile. She's getting better. Like she's getting better at like this. And she was an athlete too, right? When she was growing up. So she was like national champion for gymnastics and
Oh,
which is an incredibly hard sport. Um, and when she was doing that, she actually decided to go vegetarian and then got incredibly injured incredibly quickly and was no longer able to compete in gymnastics. So
oh,
it's yeah,
bloody
I
plants.
it piqued my interest, right? Like, so I'm seeing this journey transform, and it's like, wow. And then she's telling me all this stuff about like, okay, there's all these like ultra marathon people and all these people that are on this diet and they're doing well, and I'm like, what if it's a hack?
Mm.
Because I'm always looking for the hack. I'm always looking for an edge on my opponent or even my team for an edge for them on their opponents, whatever, right? We want to win. We don't want to lose. Losing for us, it can hurt pretty bad, right? KO, broken face, it's not fun, right? So any edge that we can get, and this seems like it could be a huge hack because if you're burning sugar, when the sugar is gone, your energy is gone.
Mm.
And with the fats, like it's almost unlimited. Like you're not going to get through it all. Like the things that I'm hearing about people doing like 5 marathons in a row fasted in
Mm.
like a week. Like what? That doesn't make sense. Like you can do that? How can a human body do that? And he's not in last place. Like you would expect that, okay, maybe, but he's in last place, but he's not, right? Like that's wild. So if we're able to be more conditioned, if we're able to have more endurance than our opponent, like that's a massive benefit,
Mhm.
right? So eventually I was able to transition off and I was like a sugar addict. Hey, like throughout my career, I was like I really love sugar. I really love the combination of carbs and sugar, which is like it's sugar and sugar, right? We know that now, but like I like cakes and
Mm.
cookies and like cornbread and anything that's like sweet and doughy. I just want to like shove it in my face. But that actually led to some problems in my career where I was getting sick more than I needed to, which was then
Mm.
limiting my training and probably didn't really help with concussions and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, I'm really excited to dig into all this stuff with you and try to get some solid information.
Yeah, definitely, man. And it's great to hear that your mom did so well. It's a shame, that she went plant-based at the time she did, and who's to say what would have happened? But she probably would have recovered from the injury a lot better. I can tell you that,
Yeah,
having some actual,
right.
protein and nutrients. So that's great that she got you onto it too, though. And well, that's great. So since you went on it, I mean, look, I mean, you're one of those guys. You've been competing at elite levels for the last 2 decades, and now you're training some of the top competitors in the world as well. You're training with them every day. You're rolling with them. You're doing it. What have you seen in your training in your life? The difference between bunch of carbs and now just meat with no carbs.
The biggest thing that I've noticed is my gut.
Hmm.
Like my gut feels a lot better. It feels solid. Like I'm able to take body shots better. Uh, but it definitely doesn't stop there. For me, one of the biggest problems that I would have is like, okay, I eat a bunch of sugar at night and
Hmm.
then I'm training in the morning and it's like conditioning in the morning. And then after before I go to conditioning, I'll wake up like 2 hours before, so I'm not eating immediately before my training session. Eat 2 hours before, but it would be like oatmeal or something like that. Oatmeal with some berries, and I always tried to eat really healthy, except for when I would eat a lot of sugar at night. But
Mhm.
overall, my diet was extremely healthy. I was always trying to weaponize my diet in order to make me a better fighter. I was just never able to kick the cookies completely. But after I eat this oatmeal, I'd go back to bed and then I'd wake up and I'd go to training. But when I would be training, not all the time, but a lot of the time, like I would have like bubble guts, right? Like I'm
Mm.
trying to do explosive sprints or like some sort of like a power endurance circuit, and I want to go take a crap, right? Like my guts are killing my gas tank, and I would also experience a lot of phlegm. So when I was sparring, I would always have to spit,
Mm.
would get this phlegm in my mouth, and it would mess up my breathing because I'm like trying to breathe and exhale and deal with this dude that's trying to whoop me in front of me, and then I'm always having to time the times where I would swallow the spit, and it was just it w- it really impacted me a lot.
Mm.
So that was a thing. I've noticed that I do recover very quickly uh, from injury. Like the catalyst that allowed me to actually go on to carnivore because I was competing in jiu-jitsu, um, and I didn't have the time to fat adapt before a match, right? Like so I would always have a match on the horizon and I never wanted to like take it off the table, just like, okay, I'm just gonna go into this diet for a bit and give it a couple months and then go back to competition.
Mm.
Eventually, some guy inverted under me and knee barred me and like bent my knee and tore my MCL. Super annoying. Super,
Oof.
super annoying. I was testing a theory and the theory wasn't right. So all good. My knee goes. And then that's the break that I needed in order to actually switch on a carnivore. And that injury healed pretty quickly. I think it healed quicker than it would have healed if I was on sugar. Obviously, we don't know, but it did heal very quickly, especially because I didn't do anything. I didn't
Mhm.
ice it once, which I hear ice isn't even that good, but I didn't do any rehab. Like I did zero rehab. I didn't do one thing. I did no mobility. I wasn't lifting. I did no lifting at all. I didn't go see anybody. I didn't go get imaging. I did nothing. Right. I just like, okay, I'm just gonna stop training and I'm gonna cut sugar. And that's all I did, and my knee's fine. Like now it's great. It's just works just as good as the other one. I'm back to full training, all the different types of trainings. Um, so those two things I noticed. I also noticed uh, clarity in my mind. So I've never been diagnosed, but I have a lot of symptoms that could be ADHD derived from ADHD, and I noticed that my mind is a lot more clear. It's easier for me to stay focused on things. Um, and yeah, I get distracted a lot less. It seems like it's brought a clarity and slowed my mind a little bit. Like I don't get that thing where my mind is just like racing from one thought to the other and it's just like super busy. It's like kind of calmed down. It's still pretty crazy, but it's calmed down quite a bit, quite a bit. So I would say those are the three biggest things that I've noticed. Yeah.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. Great. And so, one of the big, complaints or concerns that people have, or people that just don't know any better, they say, "Wow, not possible." What about your energy levels? How are you able to compete and train? I mean, you're not eating carbs. Obviously, you need carbs to
Yeah.
burn carbs, right? So, how's that work? How are
Yeah.
your energy levels when you're training and competing?
Uh, they're fantastic. Yeah, they're fantastic. I haven't competed yet
Mhm.
as a carnivore. My first competition is actually this Saturday.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, yeah, we'll probably post some of it on the channel, so people will be able to see it there. But I don't get crazy tired. Like I do
Mhm.
get tired, it does happen, but even when I am tired, it seems like I'm able to push through it. Like I'm able to like I'm able to like just keep going like a steamroller, you
Mhm.
know? Um, I I never noticed that I like gas out quickly. Um, I haven't noticed that I've lost any explosive power, which that's something I want to ask you about because my team has some pushback that I want to address. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't feel slower, like
Mhm.
at all. If anything, I feel faster. And that
Mhm.
might not be physical, that might be mental. Like I feel like when I'm sparring, it's easier for me to lock in, it's easier for me to stay focused, and it's easier for me to make decisions quickly.
Mhm.
So where I would hesitate and question something before, I don't feel that any as much anymore, and I'm able to pull the trigger quicker, which if my mind says go faster than it would before, just that alone would make me faster.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I don't notice that I'm lacking any energy really ever, except for if I don't get any sleep for a few nights in a row. Because I have two toddlers, 1 and 3, and they suck at sleep. They're just the worst sleepers ever. So I'm up a lot during the night. But even operating off a couple hours of sleep, I'll come in and my room is full of like 25 to 30-year olds that are all out there and getting after it and like want to be champion of the world. And yeah, I'm not getting dusted. I'm not getting ground out. I'm not the guy that's like bent over huffing in the corner, you know?
Mhm.
So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely a good sign. Yeah, and what about like your recovery levels, like recovery from training, getting sore? I mean, I know you still have like a bit of coffee and things like that, but I mean, pretty from the sounds of it, pretty clean. I certainly noticed that coffee will make me a little sore after like weightlifting for a couple of days, but
Mm.
nothing close to what it used to be. So how's your recovery
Mm.
and the soreness side of things, besides like, getting bruised and things?
Yeah, like the punches and stuff. It's even that, like I don't feel like I bruised in the way that I used to bruise. Like I used to get black eye
Mhm.
pretty easily, and I don't know when the last time I had a black eye was, although I'm a lot better now than I was then. So, but um, I don't really feel sore often. I just started lifting again because I decided to come out of retirement and actually start
Mhm.
scrapping again. So I'm like, oh, well, I need to really prep myself. So I started lifting again. I still am not feeling crazy sore. I started running like more long distance, and I know like when there's like an eccentric load, this is, and I might be getting this wrong, but when there's an eccentric load to a movement, that will cause more soreness. And
Mhm.
one of the run that I did, not yesterday, but the day, yeah, yesterday actually. The run that I did yesterday was like all the way up this massive hill and then all the way down. So like the running downhill made my quads a little sore, but it seems to dissipate quite quickly. And
Mhm.
just doing jujitsu and sparring, I don't feel sore. Like
Mhm.
I don't feel sore from it like at all,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
I never really thought of that, but yeah, I haven't felt sore except for that like hill run and a little bit from weights, which I'm doing Olympic lifting, right? So
Mhm.
there's a decent eccentric load in that in the catch, right? So you would imagine that that would make you pretty sore, and so far it really hasn't.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's the thing. Like when you get rid of all these like plant toxins, like those are the things causing the inflammation, pain, stiffness, and soreness that you feel. And it's a warning. It's like, hey, get away from me. Don't eat me. I'm going to hurt you. And but because we've been eating this stuff our whole lives, we just think that that's normal. That being poisoned is normal, and that's that feeling of being poisoned. No, that's just normal. That's just what happens after you work out. And I mean, I used to gauge how good of a workout, how hard I was working by how sore I was. And then all of a sudden, I just was
Yeah.
never getting sore. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then I sort of, figure that out. But it's, yeah, I think that's probably one of the ones that pisses off like gym bros the most. They're like, bullshit, you get
Uh,
sore. And it's just like, stop eating plants for 2 weeks. Find out for yourself. Like it's actually a
totally.
thing. You know,
Uh,
and but yeah, well, that's awesome, man. I think that's great that you're thinking about going back into fighting. I mean, you're still a young guy. Like, how old are you now?
I'm 41.
41. That's plenty of time. Like, think about it. Think about it. Two things. One is, the direct and the indirect. So direct, Randy Couture started fighting at 33. He retired at 47, right? And he was a badass, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Secondly, you look back at historically when people were eating properly, they were like the competitive athletes of their time for decades longer than we are now, right?
Mm,
Well, I mean, this is all, fighting being the closest thing to that. All these sports, these combat sports, I mean, they're just surrogates for war. These are surrogates for fighting and showing dominance and defeating an enemy, right? So let's go back to actual warriors. You look at Alexander the Great. When he conquered the known world, his warriors, his foot soldiers that held a 14-foot spear with a 5-foot tall, foot long blade, and they'd just be holding that sucker,
easy.
stabbing the hell out of people. His foot soldiers, they ranged from in their 20s to in their 60s, right? So these guys were going around for
Wow.
45 years just murdering people, right? With big heavy equipment on them, right?
Yeah,
Like if your body's breaking down, if
totally.
you're not capable of doing that, you're in trouble. And the thing is these are the most dangerous ones. They know how to survive. They know how to fight. They know how to get the job done, right? And that's you. You've got 20 years of experience now, and now your body's working as good or better as when it did when you were 20, right? Because you're feeding it properly, right? And then one of Alexander
Yeah.
the Great's
Yeah.
generals, back then the generals didn't just sit in the tent and just like direct the troops. They were out in the front lines. So Alexander led his troops. He was at the front of every cavalry charge. One of his other generals led one of his other wings of cavalry. He was 78. 78 leading the charge on a horse in full armor, just hacking the hell
Wow.
out of people, right? So, you know, the
Crazy.
yeah, the body's way more capable of that. And you're seeing that now. You're seeing that, things sort of coming together. I mean, your mom's, from the sounds of it, she's aging backwards. She's looking younger. She's getting healthier, you know, and our bodies are so much more capable than that. We're designed genetically, we're designed to live 120 years on average, meaning that if you just stay out of your own way and don't mess up, you should make it to 120 without doing anything special, right? And yet we're dying in our 60s and 70s and saying 80s, well, that's pretty good, right? 90, wow, they lived a long time. It's 4 decades early,
Yeah.
right? And that means if you died 3 or 4 decades early, it's because you've been poisoning yourself and you've been sick for years leading up to that, and your body's been breaking down. Doesn't have to do that. Native Americans, they're out in the plains, hunting buffalo and things like that. They were living to be 110, 120, sometimes longer than that. And they didn't have old folks' homes.
Really?
There weren't people going around with
Where did you where
dementia.
did you where did where did you hear that? Like where did you
That was in my
find that?
genetics class. I learned that in genetics at the University of Washington 20 years ago. That we know as
Wow.
geneticists, based on the length of our telomeres on our chromosomes, that we should live to be 120 years on average. That's what humans are designed for biologically. Yeah. Yeah. So, thinking that like you and I are middle
That's a
aged now.
challenge. Let's
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
I'm gonna live to 125.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, I'm on a 130-year timeline. That's how I think about
Let's
it,
go.
you
I
know?
like it.
And then we'll figure out, we'll see if some of these longevity people, they figure something out. And, I mean, I don't dabble in that at the moment because it's like everything's pretty preliminary. But, again, I'm working on a 130-year timeline. So in the next 20, 30 years, if something pans out to be great. Yeah, sure. I'll start taking it after there's some like, good hard evidence to go with it, but,
Yeah, yeah.
already I'm going to live, decades longer than I would otherwise. So, I got time, but your body's going to work actually properly. Saying that we're middle aged, like when we're still in we just come up to 1/3 of our natural life, right? When you get into your 40s, that's still prime adulthood. Literally
Totally.
prime of your life. And you'll see this when you
Yeah.
start training. When the more you train on carnivore, and the better you feel, and the better your results get, and lifting weights, you're going to put on muscle easier than you ever have in your life, and your energy is just going to
Yeah,
be
I'm
through the
excited.
roof. And just to we can talk about the science and everything like that. I did a whole talk on ketogenic carnivore athletes, talking about how it's much better as an explosive athlete to be on a carnivore, ketogenic carnivore diet. But the only thing that you need to show the guys on your team up is just beat their ass. Like it's just
Oh
like
yeah, I do. But
it's like
that's the problem though, is I'm I've been beating their ass before,
mhm,
right? I've been
yeah.
beating their ass regardless of the diet. So
So what are they
that's
complaining
not a
about? You know, they say they're saying that you don't have like you may not have the explosive power or whatever, but did you lose any explosive power? I mean that should be obvious to anyone that you haven't, and it's like, all right, you just train up like a crazy ass workout, just really just drive it home that like you're on another level than they are. Like it was that was
Yeah.
I was I'm sure Matt Hume, who's a great
Yeah.
MMA fighter and trainer. So I trained with him since I was 14. I got lucky that his
Whoa,
gym,
cool.
yeah, AMC was a few miles from my house, and he was the high school wrestling coach. And I started
Uh,
fighting, well, training before I even went to high school and was on the wrestling team and things like that. But I'd
Dang.
heard that he was going to be the coach there too. And so I went down there and I just like, yeah, I wanted to do that. So I was training um, there, and I absolutely loved it. So it was just like every day I finished school, I would come home, I'd take a nap on the couch, I'd get up, and it was like 4 o'clock. I'd either cycle or run down. And then training started like 4:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, and then 7 o'clock was fighters training. And I trained from, yeah, it was 7 to 10 o'clock every day. And so I was there from like 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock every single day, and absolutely loved it. And I was in pretty good shape. I was definitely in better shape than a lot of people in my school, just being out of training I had. But then we did this one thing where Matt took us up and we ran up from AMC up to the high school, up to the track up there. And it was a few miles up, and so we didn't know what he wanted us to do. We didn't know what was going on, right? And so we just ran up there, and it was like 3, 4 miles up there, and I was at the front of the pack, and I was up there running with Matt, and then sort of in the last like you know half mile or something like that, I just picked it up and I just ramped up, and I beat him, and I beat Matt by 100 yards or so. And I was just there, just crowing. Oh, look at me. I'm the first one here. I beat Matt and everything like that.
Oh
And
man, you're breaking up a bit of connection.
oh, am I? Oh, shoot. How's the connection? Let me see what's going on here with the
No.
internet. Let me just see if
Let's
maybe
see if
fix the
mine is
internet
probably.
here. Let me try one thing here. See if this is any better. Okay, we'll try that.
Are you
Uh,
able to hear me properly?
I can hear you. It looks like you're sort of glitching a little bit as well. Um,
Yeah. Dang,
just,
man.
just All right, so we're just having some technical difficulties there. But yeah, so I was saying, we ran up to the high school track with Matt Hume and all the rest of the guys from the gym. And these are, I'm a teenager, like I'm like a fairly young teenager, and these are all pro fighters, and there's Matt Hume, and he's still fighting at this point. So this guy is, super fit, and I'm there crying. Oh, look at me, I came in first. We had no idea what he had planned in store for us. That was just getting to the workout. That wasn't even the workout, right? He had us go to the track. He said, "Okay, so here's the thing. We're going to sprint the straights, and you can jog the outside. You can go as slow as you want around the outside. You can run, you can jog, you can walk, you can crawl, but you have to keep moving. And then when you get to that line on the straight, it's a 100 meter sprint. It's just all out, and you'll try to line up where you're with somebody so you can like go against each other and try to race each other, so you really challenge each other. And we're just like, oh, okay, how long are we doing that? It's just like until I tell you to stop. And oh my God, dude, I don't know if this was like in his plan to like just like really like humble me in particular and us, because I was just like, oh, look at me, I came in first. He's just like, you're gonna know exactly like how where you stand. We were there, I swear to God, we were there for hours, just hours. And like it was the point that like we're going and we're hitting the sprints and we got to the point where we were just panting and sweating and just barely moving around the outside. And then we go hard as hell on those sprints, but oh, we were dying around the flats and we're just desperate to try to get to like racing to that line so we could rest. The faster we got there, the faster we could rest and
Yeah.
walk slowly. He never slowed down. He didn't slow down at all. He lapped us like at least 10 times. I am not exaggerating. Like easily lapped us 10 times. Dude never slowed down. He just kept trucking. And he was going around the outside. He was running. He was like going at a fair clip. And then he hit the straight, whoa, and he would just take off. And then we had to run back. And then we had to keep training. I've never been so exhausted and so dead in my life.
Oh my
Running back,
God.
I was struggling to get back. And then we had like this whole training. I'm like, we're still going? Like, Jesus. And he just, man, he ground us into the ground. And it was just like, there was just I mean, if I ever thought in my life, I mean, I didn't think for a second I was in better shape than him. I just thought it was kind of cool to get in front of him. Man, I paid for that. And like that was definitely a humbling experience. He absolutely crushed us. But you know what? Then I was in I was a sophomore, so I was right before because I started university at 16, so this was right before that. And we did like no, sorry. This was after that because I would come back for sports. So I was already at college, but I was coming back for
Okay.
sports. And so we did this like, we had to run a mile and things like that, just as like you had to beat a certain time. And like my last time was like
Okay.
7 minutes and like 20 something seconds or something like that. And then like I ran it again and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna sprint the straights and run around the outside. And like I lapped the entire team. Like I just was booking and I finished 4 laps. And the coach was like, hey, you're doing great. You're on a great pace. Keep going. Last lap. I'm like, no, I'm done. That's 4. He's like, wait, what, you done? It's like that was 4. And yeah, so I absolutely just smoked it. And I don't even know exactly what my time was, because he said it was like 4 minutes and 40 something seconds. But that was after like cajoling him for a while, saying like, "No, I'm done. What is my time?" So it was like this well sub 5 minute mile, and
Crazy.
yeah, but that is just cranks you to another level. So, if they want proof that this diet gives you like the explosive energy you need, show them. Let them know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
them regret
You're giving me some
ever
ideas here.
asking you that. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I love that language. I shall do exactly that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
one of the
definitely.
things that they've been pointing out, right? Because I've got this one student that is taken like nutrition or something in school or
Hmm.
something in school. I don't know. But
Hmm.
he's like sending me screenshots of his textbook, right? And one of the
Hmm.
things he's saying is that it's been proven that you lose this explosive ability if you're burning fat instead of
Hmm.
burning sugar. That if you are trying to go for long distances and you're not needing to go at 100%, then it can be very beneficial for like distance runners and all that. But if you're an MMA fighter, if you rely on explosive power, if you're a sprinter,
Hmm.
right? Like no sprinters are carnivore, essentially. So I was
Except
wondering
they
if you
are.
could speak to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, there are. I mean, like, you may have seen, but I had Ryan Talbot on twice. He was a pole vaulter, and then he went carnivore and decided to switch to the decathlon, which has, sprinting, running, hurdles, all that sort of stuff, high jump, pull, all that stuff. So a lot of sprinting, a lot of explosive moves, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
In his second decathlon ever, he won the NCAA Big Ten tournament, set a school record for Michigan State, and was an All-American. In his third decathlon, he was the All-American, and he was three-time All-American and either placed first or second in the Big Ten every year in his last 3 years. And he just missed out on the Olympics, and he represented the U.S. for the Pan Am Games and got bronze just last year. He's been carnivore the entire time. One of the things that he mentioned that his testosterone levels went from 760 up to 1150. And you cannot tell me that a professional athlete would not benefit by nearly doubling their testosterone, and how that's not gonna help with explosive power. Of course it is. I mean, people are cheating, getting banned from their respective sports for taking steroids and things like that to jack up their
Yeah.
testosterone and get,
Yeah.
get that amount of an increase in their testosterone for the performance advantage. This just comes from eating meat and not eating all the carbs and getting your insulin down. Um, so do you remember anything that he said on how they justify, how they proved that explosive power, you couldn't do this? Was it anything to do with VO2 max? Do you remember any of that crap?
I don't think they cited anything about VO2 max. They were just he had some Chat GPT produced
Oh,
studies
well.
that like he coupled his knowledge with Chat GPT, right? And so he's like, yeah, okay, so there's this study and there's that study that is
Mhm.
shown that these athletes um had a huge reduction, like 60% or 40% reduction in their explosive power compared to
Mhm.
this other group that was eating
Mhm.
carbs all this time.
Yeah.
It's I've also heard that it is not as the fuel source is not as available, that you're not able to just start using it right away like you would carbohydrates, that it takes some time. And he was saying something about oxygen. So he's saying that, not he's saying, but sending me screenshots from his textbook. And here's what it said here. The problem is that fat can be broken down only as long as oxygen is available. Oxygen must be present for your body to burn fat for energy, but not to burn glycogen. In the initial stages of exercise, oxygen is not yet available. It can take from 20 to 40 minutes of exercise before fat is maximally available to the muscles as fuel. But the glucose in your blood and the glycogen in your muscles are pressed into service first. So it's just saying that like carbs are able to be utilized right away, and you got to wait like 20 to 40 minutes of your training before you're able to really utilize the fat that is in you.
I mean, it's cute, but it's not true. I mean, think about
Okay.
it for yourself, like, I mean, does it take you 40 minutes to start getting your energy?
No, like I feel like I
Yeah,
can go right away.
yeah, exactly, because you can. The thing is that, he's talking about fat oxidation. This is slightly different than utilizing ketone bodies for energy. Your body can use ketones like that. And so, ketones are derived from your fat and from fat oxidation. But the thing is, you're always doing that. I mean, it doesn't take 40. I mean, if we're starting from a vacuum and your organism was just starting up, maybe, but even then, no. You're right now burning fat. You're right now utilizing fat oxidation and ketone bodies for the energy. Every single tissue in your body predominantly will utilize ketones primarily before ketones, even your muscles, but only when ketones are available. So when you have the reason we're running on glucose all the time, we think that glucose is the bee's knees, is because no one has ketones. And so we're studying all these things in the context of people who eat a lot of carbs, you know? And so, your brain feels like, oh, you need 120 grams of glucose a day for your brain. No, you don't. You need ketones. When you have ketones available, even if you have an abundance of glucose, your brain will only, two-thirds of your brain will only run on ketones, even though there's an excess of glucose, right? So no glucose, just ketones, right? So that means your brain prefers ketones. That's a clear preference. It's only when the ketones start going down that it starts filling the gap with glucose. It's a backup energy supply.
Mhm.
Same goes for your heart. Same goes for your intestine. Same goes for all your organs. Same goes for your muscles. So and besides,
Really?
yes. So even if and even if that weren't true, even if you needed to run on glucose or glycogen, you make glucose and glycogen. It's gluconeogenesis. You're making glucose and glycogen all the time. We're both in ketosis. We both haven't had carbs in a while. I haven't had carbs in nearly a decade. My blood sugar is normal. Last time I checked, my blood sugar was 84, right? Where'd that come from? Right? You don't need to eat carbs in order to burn carbs. You make carbs. You're predominantly all of your tissue will run on ketones if there are ketones available. And there are a few other things that you use glucose and glycogen for, and you make those in abundance. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, meaning that there is the amount of carbohydrates that you have to consume in order to not die throughout the entire course of your life is 0 grams. That is a well
Crazy.
established fact. There are entire civilizations that have never eaten a carbohydrate in their entire life, right? Like the Inuit, people living in people crossing the land bridge from Asia to North America during the last ice age in the Arctic Circle, 1,500 miles north of what is now Seattle, when Seattle was under a mile-high block of ice, right? What sort of tubers and honey and breakfast cereal were they having up there? It was nothing. They were eating a bunch of like mammoth and walrus and things like that. You know, so um, one of the things that the reason they say this, so you can't have like a high intensity sport, super high athlete, like you said, okay, yeah, if you're sort of running a marathon, you're at a slower pace, then fine. But if you're really ramping it up, really explosive, then you need carbohydrates. The reason he's saying that, and this is really the reason I know this is what he's talking about is because, or this is like the origins of the people he's talking about and why they're saying that is because it's been around for a while. That when traditionally, when you look at athletes who are carb fueled, right, they're eating carbohydrates. When you get up to about 60% VO2 max, maybe really working hard, but not just killing yourself, right? Um, you're burning fat. This is what I talk about, like that phase two cardio and things like that. You get your heart rate and just this area, and yeah, you're burning fat. And you go past that, then you're burning carbs. So that's what they talk about. If you want to burn fat, you got to stay in this zone right there, right? And
Yeah.
so, well, if you want to go more intense, well, then you need carbs. Obviously, you need carbs if you want to be an intense athlete, right? So those studies are with carb fueled athletes. When you've done that with ketogenic
Yeah.
athletes, they find that people are still running on ketones and fat oxidation over 90% VO2 max. And so even then, in those groups, there was a McSweeney, what was it? No, sorry, that was another one I'll get to. The Volex Faster trial. Volek and Finney published a study in 2016 called the Faster trial, and they looked at Ironman and ultramarathon runners who were like elite world class guys who had already
Mhm.
been doing keto for a long time. They took some other ones that had been, again, world class that had been doing, just normal carbs, right? And they found that they looked at their VO2 max and they found that that the carb group, yeah, certainly it drops down. They're not oxidizing fat after 60%. It's really the peak is around, sort of 50%, 45, 50% VO2 max for peak fat oxidation, which is also a lower peak. And then in the keto group, the fat oxidation peak went way higher and way longer. And so they didn't stop oxidizing fat until around 92% VO2 max. And so you look at the total
Mm.
amount of energy that they use, 90% of it was from fat, right? And and then it was
What else would it be? Like at that point, like, okay, so sorry to cut you off, but so you're oxidizing fat as a ketogenic athlete all the way up to 92% VO2
Mhm.
max. What about that less 8%? Then you need the glycogen for that?
Yeah, but you make it. That's all glycogen that they make, glycogen and carbs.
Okay.
Their blood sugar is still right here. And these are
Yeah.
keto
Yeah.
athletes, so they're not sucking down gels and packets and things like that, and sugar water.
Uh-huh.
They're just going. They're just running on their fat, right? That guy Alex
Yeah.
McDonald that ran 5 marathons in 5 days completely fasted, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's the thing. Like
Crazy.
you make blood sugar, you make glycogen, and the really interesting thing about the faster trial is they had them do this 3 hour run, right? So they're on the treadmill just booking out for 3 hours, right? But they did muscle biopsies. So they did a muscle biopsy before the run, after the run, and then 3 hours after the recovery, which is pretty wild. They did a muscle biopsy right before. So they said that, and then they had to run for 3 hours after they just like did a
Yeah,
biopsy out of their
nuts.
leg. Yeah. So they said it was
That's
like
crazy.
it felt like someone was stabbing them in the leg with a pen every step they took for 3 hours, right?
That's fun.
And so in the carb group and the keto group, they looked at their muscle glycogen levels. They were exactly the same at every stage, right? And the carb group was sucking down sugar water, gels, sugar gels, carb packets and things like that. Keto group was just letting their body do its thing. Didn't eat any
Yeah.
carbohydrates. And so they had, their muscle glycogen, they all started at the same level, even though the keto group didn't carb load. And then after the run, it went down, but they both went down the same degree. In fact, the keto group was slightly above. And then 3 hours later, they both recovered to the same degree, except the keto group didn't use any of it. And the real interesting thing about these trials, and there's several other studies that show very similar results, at least no detriment to going keto. And the
Yeah.
longer you're on keto, the better the performance. And so the keto group starts outperforming once you become keto adapted. Now, there is a transition period, and your body doesn't get used to running on ketones for at least a few weeks. And then more and more as the months go by, it gets better and better and better. And so, you know, um, in those trials where they actually let them keto adapt and they had all these benefits, the keto group was at least performing at the same level or better. And the carb groups, these are elite athletes, right? And then some of them were like weekend warriors. But in the ones with the elite athletes, all these guys are like pre-diabetic. Some of them are getting diabetic because the amount of carbs and sugar that they're taking in, it's just killing their metabolism. Yeah, exactly. It's just destroying the
Yeah.
metabolism. Okay, so you're getting performance. Well, we know from randomized controlled crossover trials done by Professor Tim Noakes in South Africa that you don't get any better results. You'll get the same results at most, and you're getting diabetes, and you're getting sick, and your gut's bubbling all the time. You feel like you need to vomit or take a crap in the middle of a fight, which is not a good time to be
Bad
like
time.
feeling like you need to go.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
and you have all these other added problems, and you're not performing any better. So it's not really any benefit. The things that your buddy's probably talking about are things like the supernova trial, which was done looking at keto and carb athletes. And they found same thing, that VO2 max was way higher, burning a lot more fat further on. But they said, but the actual output, wasn't as good. Like the energy utilization wasn't as good. They weren't able to perform as well. Okay, well, let's examine. So they say, well, it doesn't matter what this, metabolism was. They're not getting the performance. Okay, but let's take a look. They put these guys on a ketogenic diet and then like tested them the next week. So there's no adaptation. They also just said, yeah, have some salt. When you're first adapting to ketogenic diets, your insulin starts coming down and you lose too much salt. So you can get dehydrated. You can get, hyponatremic. You can get, well, it's hard to get fully hyponatremic, but your salt levels can go down, and that will absolutely affect performance as a high level athlete, right? So these guys weren't given enough salt. They weren't controlled for electrolytes, and they didn't have any time to fat adapt, right? Whereas, and
Yeah.
so that's what they found. Wow, they didn't get the same performance. Whereas if you go to the Tim Noakes trial, where he looked at recreational athletes, um, and it was a randomized crossover trial, meaning that they randomized the participants, and one was a keto group, one was a carb group. They let them keto adapt for 6 weeks at least. And then they did all these trials and tried to just crush them and kill them with all these sorts of things to make sure they didn't just have some residual glycogen and things like that, that they were actually running on fat and running at that level. And they did that. So they did a series of 800-meter runs, and they just did 800-meter run after 800-meter run, just again and again and again, just trying to just trash these guys. And they just kept
Yeah.
going, kept going, kept going. And so you're not having any drop, but now you're tapped into your fat, and your fat, you have way more energy in your fat because your when you have let's say you have a 65 kilo individual, right? 6% body fat, elite athlete, right? That that little dude can maximally with maximum carb loading can stuff in his liver and his muscles about 2,400 kilocalories of energy. Okay, it's about a day's worth of energy. So if you're doing a really high
Yeah.
level sort of exercise, you're gonna burn through that, you know. But that
Yeah.
same 65 kilo individual with only 6% body fat, super lean, that 6% body fat has over 35,000 kilocalories of energy. It's over 15 times the amount of energy because that is our main uh, fuel source. That's our
Yeah.
storage form of energy. It's the most efficient, and you can just see it right there. Maximal glycogen storage 2,400 versus 15 times that in 6% body fat. Right. And if you're bigger than that or you have more body fat than that, you've got more energy than that. And now you're tapped in.
Mm.
When you eat carbohydrates, it locks that off. You can only run on your glycogen now because if insulin is up, you cannot burn fat. Insulin blocks lipolysis, which is the breakdown and degradation of fat for energy. Okay, so you can't use that, right? So these guys that they're doing the keto group in Tim Noakes' trial, like they're still performing at the same level, they're still able to put the same output, but they don't ever stop. They don't need to refuel. They don't need carbs. They don't need sugar. They don't need sports drinks, right? And they had no drop in performance. And then they flipped them. So it's a crossover trial. So the keto group became the
Yeah.
carb group, and the carb group went keto and gave them, or it was like a 2 week washout period, eat whatever you want. And then they went and went again 6 weeks keto. And again, no drop in the performance, right? So with at least 6 weeks, we know there's no drop in performance. Supernova didn't
Mm.
give them 2 weeks, you know? And so, you're just not fat adapted at that point, and the
Yeah.
electrolytes and the dehydration and all these other sorts of things. There's a lot of flaws with that study. Then you get specifically
Okay.
for explosive. You want to go to the McSweeney trial in 2018, where they had a group of, again, elite world-class athletes, Ironman, ultra marathoners. They self-selected into a keto or carb group. So they chose which one they went into, which one they wanted to do. And they gave them 3 months to adapt, so 12 weeks to adapt, right? So a good long period of time. And they did 3 trials. They did a 100-mile run, so big ass run, a six
That's
second
wow.
sprint, and then a critical power test of like a sort of really high intensity um, anaerobic, sort of highly sustained anaerobic outputs, so heavy like weights, all that sort of stuff, right? So that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the keto group outperformed the carb group in all three. The last
Wow.
two came to statistical significance. The 100-mile run didn't come to statistical significance, but the trend was they all beat them, right?
Okay.
But just with statistics, it's just you call it statistically significant. It could have been a fluke sort of thing. The other two
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
statistically significant. So
Wild. The
yeah, so
explosive
for
ones.
the explosive ones, so for the critical power test, the anaerobic sustained anaerobic test, and the sprint, the 6 second sprint, the keto group beat the other side. That's statistically significant. So specifically for explosive sports, we know that this is better. Now, how good is any study? They all have flaws. This one had,
Mhm.
20 or so participants. Would we have gotten different results with 500? Well, maybe that's what statistical significance is about. When you say something statistically significant, it's less likely to be a fluke, right? And so if we
Mm.
did this with 500 people, we should see the same results. That's what statistically
Mm.
significant means. So you need to have enough people to make that work, and they did. But yeah, so specifically the explosive power um, came to statistical significance. So, I mean, I understand where he's coming from because that's the old teaching, and that's just the traditional
Yeah.
teaching. But it's being upended. Tim Noakes is one of the top exercise physiologists and sports medicine doctors in the world. He wrote books about this, about high intensity training, working with national teams, and world-class athletes. He was a top marathon runner himself. And all of a sudden he woke up one day and he's like super fit, writing books on how to be a badass. And he's diabetic and he's a doctor and he's an athlete.
Crazy.
And it's like, whoa, what the hell's going on? And he realized that he'd been wrong this whole time. And so now he's basically spending his retirement years undoing his entire legacy about how you need carbs as an elite athlete. And he's saying, no, you
Wow.
don't. He's saying like I feel like I've been lying to people for the last 30 years because it's just wrong. And so now this research is coming out. The before it just got regurgitated and repeated, and so that was just what it was. That was a dogma. Everyone's doing that. All the top athletes are eating carbs, so obviously you have to eat carbs. Well, no, it's just they were told to eat carbs, and so they eat carbs. But they're all having gut issues. They're all having chronic disease issues. They're all getting freaking diabetic. You know, and so that's not actually helping. But you get some and people say the total opposite. Other times they'll say, well, sure, like in sprinting or rugby, because I played professional rugby for 10 years before medical school. 5 of those years were ketogenic carnivore, and I've never felt better in my entire life. I mean, it's hands down. It was just night and day. And so they'll say, well, yeah, sure, but so maybe for rugby or like sprinting or something like that, but for the endurance things, you have to have carbs. You have to have carbs. You have to be taking down gels, and no one's in the Tour de France that's on keto. Like, well, actually, there's a guy named Chris Froome who actually won the Tour de France 4 times, and he's keto. That's funny, And I was like, well, the high intensity sort of fighting, it never worked. I was like, really? Because there's UFC fighters right now that are not only keto but full carnivores. A Wilton Ziegler and a female fighter named Marina Moroz. They're both carnivore. They're both
Uh,
openly carnivore, and they're both UFC fighters, right? And well, and I don't know about Wilton. I think he's in the UFC, but anyway, he's a pro MMA fighter, and so I mean, there's I did a whole laundry list of top athletes that are all carnivore. And when you get back into it too, we'll add you to the list as well.
Sick. Yes. Yes, that will be very shortly. Probably this summer. Probably this
Nice.
summer. And one of the things that I really wanted to leverage with this diet is the ability to compete more often.
Hmm.
Now, I wanted to bring up the TBI, and hopefully you're able to shed some light on how this kind of a diet will help you to absorb damage more,
Hmm.
right? Like decreasing inflammation and helping in recovery. Like I feel that in my last two fights, right? Like I fought Islam Makhachev and then I fought Rustam Khabilov, both from Team Eagle, same team as Khabib, both trained by
Hmm.
Khabib's dad. I
Hmm.
fought them 5 weeks apart, and my early career, all my fights were very close together. Like I fought like
Hmm.
9 times in my first year. But as I went on, I would have big layoffs, and most times you want to really make sure that you're prepped for each camp individually. So I wouldn't put fights back to back, and I would be like a lot of times like 4 months or 6 months out of the cage before my next fight. And then going back to back in that last fight, they went back to back 5 weeks out, which isn't even really
Hmm.
that close, but it's a lot closer than it normally was. And I felt so comfortable in the cage. I
Nice.
felt like it was very, very normal, right? Like it was just another day, like I was just here. It didn't feel like big and grandiose, and it was able to lock in a lot better. And so I'm figuring like if I'm able to get into competition shape and go compete, like as long as I'm not savagely injured from the competition, like I'm just gonna book another one and like fight it in a couple of weeks, and then book another one and fight it in another couple of weeks. And I I think that I'll actually be able to do it because of this diet. Like this diet
Hmm.
is gonna really help me to be back in the cage quickly.
Yeah. No, yeah, it definitely can. I mean, obviously, you get like little bumps and bruises and like injuries and things like that. Like you might need a little more time to rehab it, but your muscles will recover. Absolutely. You know, like that will
What
all
about your
recover.
brain? What about like okay, I get punched in the head a bunch of times. Uh,
Take some time off.
what's the difference in the brain?
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. Yeah. Well, I was also going to say too, I also remembered, one of the Gracies are doing carnivore too, Holland Gracie. He runs Gracie
Oh,
Jiu-Jitsu
okay.
in San Francisco. I had him on the podcast as well. He's been doing carnivore for a few years now as well. He says it's a game changer. He just feels absolutely amazing, doing that. So, there are top fighters in the world that are doing this, and they're explicitly saying that this has launched their game, that they feel much better. These are top level world class athletes, and they're saying this made it a lot better, right? So, yeah, you can put your buddy's mind at ease, and also remember, just wear his ass out, and he'll know. There's like it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what a book says.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the studies say or anything like that. If you
Yeah.
just go out there and just wear his ass out, and it's like, well, okay. I mean, I can't. I've seen this for myself. You're not lacking any energy. Um, but yeah, it's really important, point with the TBIs and the injuries. If you have, there's certain rules, like all the SCAT rules. They have new versions, every few years. But they're the concussion rules for, going back into contact sport, certainly for combat
Yeah.
sport. You need to take a certain amount of time off if you have like a diagnosed concussion. And you could argue that unless you really just don't get hit and you win a really clean victory, you're probably going to have some form of concussion coming out of any fight, you know. And so you should probably, think about that and at least take some time off. If you have a back concussion where you're sort of wobbly on your feet and you're having can't really sort of, spell world backwards and remember, three items that, 3 minutes later, something like
Yeah.
that. You're going to need like 23 days off from anything, like no training, no running, no, you need to rest because your brain needs to rest. And so you don't want to get your blood pressure up. You don't even want to like think too hard. You want your brain to rest. You want to go to like a yoga retreat and just zen out for a few weeks, and certainly not go back into contact sports, but you really shouldn't be training either if you have a concussion like that, and that can be diagnosed with these criteria that anybody can look up online. And but the advantages of from a combat perspective and a concussion perspective is that when you get a concussion, there's the initial damage, but then your brain actually continues to swell. Actually, you get neuroinflammation, and your brain starts to swell and get more damaged because of that swelling. So now it's swelling and it's pushing on things and it's sort of crushing itself with its
Mm.
with its swelling. Not so much that you're gonna die unless there's like a bleed, unless there's something like really wrong. So if you had like a very serious injury, sometimes the brain can really, really swell up. But that's rare. But with like severe head injuries, sometimes you can get that, and you even have to do like a decompressive craniectomy where you actually take off side of the skull and let it just swell out there for a while. I've had to do that surgery many a time at
Yeah, that's
2 in the morning.
crazy. Your brain's
Yeah.
wild.
So, well, I'm not a brain surgeon, but looking to become one. And so, but because I've been there for a
Uh,
while and I've done this, you operate independently for certain things, and certainly the traumas like that is something that I did quite frequently on my own, and um, and so you have to do that. So would be very unlikely to get that unless you got a real bad knockout or something like that. But either way, you get these concussions, and the brain will swell to a certain degree, and that can cause more damage with that swelling. And so for the next 48 hours, this thing is swelling up and swelling up and swelling up, and you're getting more and more damage after the fact. Well, the thing is that ketones are actually anti-inflammatory. They block something called the NLRP3 inflammasome. And so they go up into your brain. And remember, your brain optimally runs on ketones. So this is better fuel for your brain anyway. Now your brain's not struggling to use some like crappy glucose. Now it's running on ketones, clean burning. and also that's suppressing inflammation. So it's actually bringing down that swelling. And so it's not enough to stop eating carbs once you've had a concussion. You need to be in ketosis at the time of concussion so
Mm.
that your ketones are already up, so that you're suppressing that inflammation. And so, it's still sort of in preliminary days, and this isn't like we don't have like necessarily hard data on this. It's still kind of mechanistic, and we have some preliminary data on this that this can help with concussion recovery and not allowing the brain to get even more damaged post concussion because there's two injuries again, the
Okay.
concussion itself and then the swelling injury. So, one thing that you can do, and some studies shown this, like especially with animals, that you're giving exogenous ketones that can sort of bring down that swelling, but you'd have to take exogenous ketones every 2 hours. And I would do that
Wow.
if I weren't in ketosis, or if someone was, I'd say, oh, look, just take for every 2 hours while you're awake, take this, and then when you're sleeping, you're going to get, it's not, it's the swelling's going to come up and then you get back on it. But that can help. But you need to be in ketosis at the time. And then there are a lot more studies than the concussion studies, um, looking at ketogenic diets improving TBI, traumatic brain injuries. And this makes sense. You're eating fat, which your brain is made out of, cholesterol. Your brain is made out of cholesterol. You need ketones. That's the optimal fuel source. So you're just giving your brain what it needs to heal from injury and repair itself, right? And again, reducing that inflammation. And so ketogenic diets, there's pretty good evidence showing that ketogenic diets are beneficial for neurological recovery post injury and post damage. And a stroke is injury. You're damaging tissue, or you have a hemorrhagic stroke where it bleeds and actually rips a bunch of tissue apart. That's injury. You're physically injuring the physical structures of the brain. And so ketogenic
Mm.
diets can help with that. And so, as an athlete, you're going to have all those benefits that we spoke about. You're going to have the mental clarity because, again, your brain's running on ketones. You don't have all this brain fog. You're in the middle of a fight. You're fighting half on instincts, and so you're there just going. If you're sort of foggy, you're a step behind the whole time. And
Yeah.
yeah, the other guy's probably brain fog too, but the thing is like you need that edge. You need your brain to be on the entire time. And if it's not, you could end up, in a lot of trouble. And this is, you take your life in your own hands when you step into the ring like that.
Mm.
It's not a small thing.
Yeah.
And so, you need every advantage that you can have. And so your brain's on and you're just firing on all cylinders. Your body's working at least as good as it was before on carbs, but it really works better because you've been on this for a long time. And if you do get banged up in a couple little knocks, you're going to have much less swelling post concussion as well.
Mm.
One thing that's good to
Yeah.
know too, there's a preliminary study that came out as well on creatine. The brain really likes creatine. Now we take this for
Mm.
muscle building and things like that, driving more energy into the mitochondria and helping with the electron transport chain and things like that, generating ATP. Once you have enough of that, though, you have enough. It's like having even more gas in your tank, going from 3/4 of a tank to full tank. As long as it's getting to the engine at the same rate, that's all you need, right? Same with creatine. But your brain really likes creatine. And when you have an injury like a concussion, or God forbid, something more serious, it wants more creatine. And more creatine can be helpful. So there's something called post-concussive syndrome where you have these symptoms of a concussion that are protracted and they go on for a lot longer. And
Yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
study
I
that,
had that. I had that.
yeah, it sucks, right? I mean, I had a
Yeah.
bad concussion. It just lasted forever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so one of the things that this preliminary study, but pretty interesting, is they gave people 60 grams of creatine, so 3 times the loading dose, for a week. And I can't remember if it was 5 or 7 days, but in that range, 5 to 7 days. And that helped. That helped a lot with post-concussive syndrome, and it helped the brain start to recover and heal as well. So those are sort of the things, you just need to give your brain what it needs. You need to reduce inflammation and just put everything in place for your brain to have a proper recovery. And one of those things is being in ketosis at the time of the concussion because it takes about two,
Yeah.
3 days to get fully into ketosis. You've already missed your window at that point if you stop eating carbs then.
That brings up another question I had.
Mhm.
Um, just for especially, I'm trying to influence more fighters to use this kind of a diet. I think it's just a healthier way of being,
Mhm.
and a better way of fighting. It's going to give a lot of advantages we've been talking about, right? But a lot of people struggle with the
Mhm.
discipline required in order to stay in ketosis. So, say you like break and you eat a cookie, like are how much carbohydrates, how much sugar can you eat and still remain in ketosis? And then once you've been kicked out of ketosis, how long does it take to get back in again?
It depends on how long you've been in ketosis. So getting back into ketosis, typically the textbook would say 24 hours, your insulin will come down low enough that you'll start making blood sugar and glycogen. To get into, full deep ketosis, possibly a couple of days. You have one cookie that may not actually kick you out of ketosis. If you've been in deep ketosis for a long time and you have that, it may transiently bump you out, but you'll get back in a lot quicker. Now, if you keep doing that and you have ass load of pasta and some bread, and like you have a whole cheat day, yeah, then you're screwed. Then it's like 72 hours, right?
Okay.
Um, but typically you can eat up to 20 grams of carbs. 20 grams of carbs a
Okay.
day is about as much as you can go and remain in ketosis.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the thing is that if you're 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 10 years down the road, you're getting more and more keto adapted, fat adapted. What I'll explain what that means for people that don't know. Keto adapted, what I mean by that is your body is, because we've just been force fed carbs our entire life and then voluntarily fed carbs. Um, we're used to running on glucose. You need different machinery and different molecular machines and receptors and transporters and things like that to use glucose predominantly versus ketones. And so this is why the supernova trial didn't have very, very good results for the keto group, was because they didn't have all the pathways set up to actually utilize those ketones. They were making all the ketones in the world, but their body wasn't used to running on them. So they didn't have all these switches flipped, right? So after, weeks of being on this, your body, well, as soon as you start that, your body starts saying, "Oh, great, ketones are here again." And they have epigenetic effects, meaning that you're turning on different genes. And so your body actually, you change your genetics. Your genes start changing in your body and you start turning on and off different things, right? And so you start turning on genes that make it so you can use ketones better and you can get that energy and utilize it better. And as the weeks go on, that gets better and better and better. And after 3 months, like in the McSweeney trial, now you're performing even better than the carb groups. As you go on, years down the road, arguably you get even better, and your mitochondria get better because mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell, right? And they make all this ATP, this energy, right? And studies have shown that after 3 months on a ketogenic diet, you have 4 times the number of mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective. So not only are you becoming keto adapted, you're also just able to produce more energy anyway, right? So, there's huge advantages for that. And sorry, I always do this. I go on like tangents and then I forget where the hell I
Yeah,
started
I
from.
do the
So
same thing. I
what
do the
was it?
same.
What was
That's
this?
perfect. It's great. It's great. You answered
What
the
was?
questions. Awesome.
But what was it? What was the first thing? 'Cause I had another point I was going to make.
Yeah, so I was asking, and like I get lost too, but I was asking, number one, how much does it take to get out of ketosis, and then
Okay, that was
how
it.
long does it take to get back?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you
So
answered both.
yeah. So, when you're fat adapted for a long time, you know, that's a process that takes months and months and months and months and months, right? And your mitochondria are growing and growing and growing and things like that. So eating some carbs, even having a cheat meal or a cheat week, you're not going to shut down all those processes. It'll start going in the other direction, right?
Ah,
But
okay.
it won't take 5 months to get, to where you were. It'll be quicker than that because you wouldn't have shut all of those processes down, right? So, you know, I wouldn't do it. I mean, the thing is that it's still gonna make you feel like
Why?
rubbish. And you'll see, you eat a bunch of carbs, you have some cookies, things like that, you will be sore. for the next few days. Like you will hurt, your body will hurt. And you'll be like, never again, not doing that shit. Or
Yeah.
have some like bread or
I just
pasta.
I don't do it. Yeah, I'm scared of my brain. I'm scared of my
Mm,
brain going back to how it was before.
yeah.
So just that just keeps me super strict. Like I've cut pretty much everything. Like I was telling you earlier, I do have a coffee, like a cup or two a day. I'll have some cream in the coffee, but I minimize that now. I got rid of eggs. I just eat meat and salt.
Okay.
That's I
Yeah.
eat coffee and cream, meat, salt, water. Lots of
Awesome.
salt, lots of water.
Nice. Well, yeah, just
Yeah,
salt to taste, you
I'm gonna
know?
smash everybody. Like
Yeah.
all the things that you're telling me, like it just gives me so much. I'm so excited. Like I'm gonna smash everyone. Like these guys are not gonna be able to compete with me. They're really not going to be able to. Like already, like technically they can't because I've just done this for way too long and I'm just my brain is too creative. They couldn't compete with me in 2018, really. Like most of them
Mm,
except for Islam. But
mm,
now it's like a whole nother level. I've just like made this whole like primal combat system. I created my own martial art. It's like really savage. But now stacked on top of this, like I feel like with the training that I'm gonna put in before the fight happens, um, I'm gonna reach levels of conditioning that other people aren't able to reach. Like I'm gonna be able to maintain energy for far longer than other people are, and then I'm gonna weaponize that and use a martial system that that accentuates that advantage.
mhm.
And also is something that people just don't use because everybody in MMA is very like this. It's like they
Mm,
do these things. They like to do jab, cross, hook, low kick, double leg, sprawl, guillotine, armbar, triangle. That's like pretty much everybody's game, right? It's all they do. It's all they focus on. And I'm just like I want to do everything but that, right? So
mm,
I just have all these different things, methods of fighting, and I really can't wait to get in the cage and just smash these guys. It's gonna be amazing. I'm really excited. I have one more question.
mm,
Because I don't know how to do this while being carnivore. And I don't know if you're working with anybody that has done it already and if you have
mm,
any insight. Um, Weight cutting. So
mm,
we manipulate carbohydrates and water for weight cutting, essentially. And
mm.
now Dan's carbohydrates. I was wondering if you had any insight on how to manipulate water in a similar way, or if you've worked with anybody that has.
It's well, the thing is you'll cut out a lot of your water weight, and so you'll be pretty dry all the time. I mean, you could drink less water and all that sort of stuff and actually get fully dehydrated, but you won't be retaining water, you know. And so, you'll notice that when you check your weight, it's much more consistent. It's much more consistent. So as long as you pee in the morning, you hop on the
Yeah.
scale, it's gonna be pretty damn similar. You're not gonna have these big ups and downs and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's gonna be pretty steady. You'll naturally shred down, right? And especially with the amount of training that you're doing, most people actually find the difficult part is keeping on the weight. And I had
Yeah. I
there was
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, it's like that's just you got to eat more meat, got to eat more meat. Okay, well, what's the other side? Don't eat enough meat. So if you don't eat enough meat, you're not going to be able to get the muscle hypertrophy. Body's gonna have to just say, okay, well, we can't maintain this whole musculature, and you're going to slim down a bit, but you're going to get super damn lean. You're not going to catabolize your muscles until you actually run out of fat. But if you're not like necessarily using them as much, you won't that you they won't just need to be built up. Ryan Talbot, he ran into that. He was losing too much weight. We figured out, okay, you just need to find more meals. You need to stick in more meals. Okay, you have a morning training, eat straight after that. You don't have a morning training, eat breakfast. Then you have a 5 hour gap until your next training. That's 5 hours, sort of a minimum on what you want as far as a gap in meals and between training, meal and training. And then eat a lot after that. And you just got to get these meals in. You just got to get that food in because the amount that he was training, he was just losing weight. Well, then when he figured out how to get enough food in, all of a sudden now he's got the opposite problem. He's putting on too much muscle, which is usually not a problem. That's usually a good problem to have, but he's a decathlete. He's got to go fast. He's got to jump high. He's got to have a pole vault over like a big ass bar. So he's actually got to stay,
Yeah.
a bit, and he was already lean. He had no fat. He was just getting jacked, he's
More
just getting
jacked.
super
Yeah.
ripped, right?
Yeah.
And so he actually had to stop lifting weights as much. He had to pull back on the weights because the more weights he lifted, more muscle he gained. It was just like, it was a direct relationship. So, that's the thing. You can pull back a bit on the weights, focus more on the concentric versus the eccentric, right? Because like you were saying, you're
Mhm.
doing more eccentric work. When you're doing that, so people don't know, concentric is when you're contracting the muscle, and then the eccentric is when you're sort of letting it down, sort of slow. And these actin fibers and the sarcomeres is the muscle unit in the cells. They sort of have these little hooks that sort of have these chemical bonding, sort of stick, and then they sort of go like this, and they go like that, and that's how they contract, right? If you stretch, it actually pulls all those out, and then there's not really many touching there. So when you contract, it's a weaker contraction. Instead of up here, and you have 80% of these contract, boom, is a huge contraction. But then when you're doing the eccentric, they're still bound, but you're elongating the muscle and it actually starts tearing it and damaging it. That's why you get that muscle damage. You get more soreness, like
Hey.
except we don't. And but you also get more hypertrophy, right? So if you do the
Um,
concentric, right, where you just do like this is one of the things. This is one of the top trainers, trained some of the top NFL prospects, and he works with like at least back in the day, he worked with the top eight NFL prospects. Yeah, it had to be a top prospect. He only worked with blue chip sort of guys, right? And and he did these things with strength to power ratio. Get your strength up, strength up, strength up, strength up, and keep your weight down. You go faster. That's all there is to it. And he was dropping guys 40 times by like half a second. It was like I forget the quarterback's name, but there's a quarterback that had a 5 second flat 40, dropped a quarterback down to 4.5 40 time. Just hauling ass, right? And
Crazy.
so one of the main things he did was a hex bar deadlift that more mimicked the natural explosive motion that you do when you're running or you're sprinting. And it was only the concentric. So you just lift it up and you drop it. Lift it up, drop it. So you wouldn't have that breakdown in the tissue. You could do it more often. You had less muscle damage, less recovery time needed. You could do it more often during the week, and you got stronger, but you didn't get bulkier, right? So you didn't put on more weight,
Mhm.
and your weight and your strength to
Mhm.
weight ratio got better and better and better. So you can do things like that. Like if you're lifting
That's
weights,
cool.
you want to focus on the concentric. So bench
Yeah.
press, you push it up, people sort of help you bring it down, and then you're just pushing it up. And then sort of lie
Uh,
down, pushing it up, sort of thing like that. Squat, same sort of
but
thing. It's a bit of a pain in the ass. You can do it with things you can drop the weights. That's easy,
yeah, you just draw them. Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
Olympic weights. Yeah, you lift them up, you drop them down, so you don't
Yeah.
go down. So that's a way that sort of a sneaky way to get the strength, but not get the bulk and the weight.
I
I
like
was
that.
yeah, and so there's I don't know if you know this guy Tyson Pedro. He was in UFC for a while. He was a bigger dude, sort of like 200 pounds, sort of. And he
I don't know.
played. Yeah, that's all right.
I
But
like
he did
I
MMA for a bit.
watched the I know
Yeah.
techniques. Well, I look
Mhm.
at people and I'm just looking at the technique that they're doing and the method and the strategy. I don't really like care who they are,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So he did. He was a professional rugby player as well. He played rugby
Okay.
league in Australia. And he went and started doing fighting MMA. Now he just switched into boxing, and he went carnivore as well, and was just getting absolutely shredded.
Yeah.
And he was saying, he's like, hey, how do I keep on weight? Like, fuck, I'm losing too much weight. And then it was like, again, you're just adding in the eating time. But I was just like, are you really worried about losing weight? Like, I mean, just maybe just go down a couple weight classes and
Yeah,
just
right.
destroy people. And and yeah, I mean, this may be a blessing in disguise, if you just cut
Right.
down, 'cause, strength is going to stay. So it depends on what you're doing, but just depending on how hard you're working. I mean, you're training so hard that if you don't eat enough, your body's gonna just sort of stay a bit. You're gonna sort of just lose a bit of weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you can just adjust that. If you don't want to go too much, if you need this energy for your body, but you're gonna shred up naturally. You're probably not gonna have too much of a problem, making weight because you're gonna be lean as
And,
shit all the time.
and
You know.
honestly, I'm crazy lean now. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like people trip out now. Like when I like have to change my shirt or something like that in the gym and I take my shirt off, or like I'll go to fights and like I'm cornering one of my fighters or whatever, and I take my shirt off to put my other my training gear on to like help warm them up or whatever, and people
Hmm.
are like, "What, are you fighting? Like, are you
Hmm.
coming out of retirement? Like you're more shredded than you were in
Hmm.
fight shape, in fight camp, like the day before your fight. Like it's wild, man. It's wild." And I was lifting then when I
Yeah.
was fighting, and I just started like 2 weeks ago, just started lifting it. So I'm really excited to see what happens now, right? Because I'm really low body fat, like very low body fat already.
Hmm.
I'm a I burn quite fast, right? I have a high metabolism. I always have had a high metabolism. It's never been really an issue for me to lose weight. Although I could always kind of gain weight as well if I would eat a lot or if I would work
Hmm.
out really hard. I can grow pretty fast. I can lose pretty fast. So, um, yeah, I think I don't foresee it being a huge issue with cutting weight. Like I think that because now I have no carbohydrates, like the water is going to leave my system faster. So normally we do like the process is like, okay, you're eating your regular carbohydrates and then you're water loading, right? So you're drinking like 8.5 liters of water a day, right?
Hmm.
For the last little bit. You kind of work up to that, but like the last like week or so, you're drinking like 8.5 liters of water a day, and then all of a sudden you cut your carbs, you cut your salt, and then you like stop drinking water, right? And you start just peeing out everything.
Hmm.
So I'm I'm gonna try to do the same process. I'm just going to like obviously there's no carbs, but I think it'll still act very similar. Like as long as I'm water loading heavily and
Hmm.
teaching my body that there's always water to get rid of, then as soon
Hmm.
as I stop drinking water, especially with having no carbs to hold it at all, and my body just not
Hmm.
being used to holding it, it's just gonna
Yeah.
gone. And then because I'm a little bit smaller, like I've been thinking like maybe I can even fight at a lower weight class. It could be
Mm.
possible. Unfortunately, weight classes are like 10 pounds difference, right? Like mostly some are 15, but like I've always fought at 155 pounds, and now it would be like maybe I can make 45. Like there's a lot of guys that I see that are 45ers that are bigger than me.
Hmm.
And if I could get to that weight, bro, people aren't gonna touch me because they got real long arms. You're gonna be way over there, buddy. Uh, but yeah, I'm really interested to see how it works, because that's one of the things that we just don't know yet as MMA fighters, and I'm sure some do that are doing it. Like obviously they have to cut weight. Um, but it's not anything that anybody's talking about on YouTube. Like, how do you
Hmm.
cut weight on carnivore? Because like the diet's going to change things a little bit, and
Hmm.
it's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully, we can film it
Hmm.
and show everybody what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is too is that you'll see that you don't actually even need to sort of coerce your body into losing water weight and things like that. You just won't retain it. And so
Mm.
you'll get down to a weight and you could, you just aim for that weight now. Just do it like sort of a slow progression and just see where you want to get to. And you'll get there, And do it like a bodybuilder does, where it's just a slow progression, over time. They're just sort of they're just working towards a goal, and because you're
Yeah,
not going to be you're not eating carbs, you're not and plants and things like that, so you're not going to be retaining water. I mean, just plants as vegetables and things like that. Like I was retaining like, I don't know, 10 pounds, 15 pounds of water weight just from eating spinach, broccoli, and kale. And my water weight would fluctuate 5, 10 pounds a
that's
day. I'm like,
crazy.
and I was ketogenic. I wasn't eating any carbs, not because I was doing keto, but just because like I noticed that anytime I had like bread or anything with carbs, my back hurt. And so I was just like, all right, well, I'm
Uh,
not doing that for like days. It'd be like 3, 4 days. My back would hurt. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm just not going to eat that crap anymore.
wild.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
so and then I dropped just the vegetables and I dropped 23 pounds in 10 days. And it was just all water weight. It looked like I'd just taken like diuretics. I just like deflated, over the course of 2 weeks. It just someone just squeezed me out like a rag or something like that. And I'm sure I lost some fat too, but I think a lot of it was water weight probably. And that's just what it sort of looked like to me. And um,
Yeah.
and so and then I was just my weight didn't fluctuate. I went down from like 267 down to 243. And I
Wow.
was 243 on the nose every single day for the next 6 months. There wasn't a single day it
Uh,
went to 242 or 244. It's 243 every single day. But I was lifting weights, I was sprinting, I was
wild.
playing rugby. And because I felt so good, at 38, I went back and started playing high level rugby. And like my team here in Seattle went professional. And so I was like back in training with all these pro athletes. Felt amazing. And yeah, and so then after like 6 months, I hurt my knee, and so I couldn't finish the season, and couldn't really play in the season. It was sort of only had played a few games, and then I started losing weight because my I couldn't train, I couldn't lift, I couldn't run, and so my legs started getting smaller, and I was pissed. I didn't want to lose
Okay.
weight, because my body was transforming. I was losing
Yeah.
shredding fat and stacking on muscle. I got down to like 6% body fat without trying. I'm just working hard. I'm
Crazy.
eating.
At
Yeah.
240?
Yeah, yeah,
Wild.
243. So it was always 243.
243,
Yeah,
243.
and
The 3,000
and
difference.
yeah, and eating until meat stopped tasting good. Just listening to my body.
Mm,
Wasn't counting any calories. Didn't have any macros. And like, oh, this is what I'm gonna have. This meal, I'm gonna have 15 meals a day, and I'm gonna eat this. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take that. None of that shit. I didn't take any supplements. I didn't have any meal prep. I didn't split up my meals. I ate 2 pounds of amazing ribeye every day. And that was it. I ate once every 24 hours and I felt fantastic. I didn't want to eat any more than that, you know. And
man.
one day I didn't even want to eat that. I'd like been training. I'd like 3 hours of lifting, 3 hours of rugby, and I'm like, all right, great. I'm gonna go home and eat a big ass steak and go and crush this out again tomorrow. And everything in me like, ooh, don't do that. Steak sounds awful. I'm like, how is that possible? I love steak. It's my favorite thing ever. Why would that not sound good right now? Couldn't figure it out. But I was just like, yeah, I was just like, don't eat it. Don't do it. I was like, that's bizarre. What the hell's going on? And I said, okay, well, I'm going to cook a steak anyway, but I'll like reverse sear it, take like 2 hours, make it this like amazing ass thing, and give myself some time to settle down. So I sat down, watched a movie, chilled out. Steak was ready, had it, and I was like, I guess I could eat a little. I started eating it, and it was just like I got like a quarter of the way through, and I was just like, I am just not enjoying this. I just really don't want to eat this. It was amazing steak. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
So I was really nervous because I had a lot of training the next day. I had like, I don't know, 6 hours of training the next day planned. And I was like, shit, all right, I really need this energy though. Not realizing that I was, bulkier then. So I still had a lot of fat on
Adaptation.
me, so I'm like, probably had, like 100,000 calories, sitting there waiting for me. I didn't need anything. That's what I realized. And the next day I felt fine. Didn't eat it, put it away. And the next day I felt fine. Felt absolutely amazing and no problem because, you, I sort of came to the realization, you don't, the energy that you use now for your training today did not come from your meal this morning or last night. It came from 2 weeks ago, right? And you put that in your fat, and then now you're using the fat, right? And so you don't need to eat
Okay.
the same day or the day before, or whatever. And then I thought back on all my games before I realized all this stuff. That all the games when I felt my best, I never ate that. I never ate on game day. Never ate. That was like just an unbreakable rule. Like that I tried that a couple times. It was just like never again. And so I always played fasted, always play. I always tell people, always play hungry. You want that little edge, that little killer instinct that I need to go out and kill something. I have to go and fight for my dinner and have that sort of edge. And and then I even started feeling better if I had dinner the night before, I didn't feel as good. So I would like skip dinner. I may not even eat on
Wow.
a Friday if I had a Saturday game, or maybe would eat way earlier in the day. And I started feeling better doing that. And it naturally sort of went into that. And now I know why. Because you just want to be running on your body. You don't want a bunch of food in your gut and slowing you down.
So in fighting, we make weight and then 24 hours later we fight, right? So they
Hmm.
give you a bit of a breather to like build yourself back because everybody's dehydrating and
Hmm.
and bringing themselves down like 20, 30 pounds. It's a lot.
Hmm.
It's pretty unhealthy.
Dangerous stuff. Yeah.
But the amount of food the amount of food that people are and juice and just sugar that people are ingesting after weigh-ins, like if it was more beneficial to be fasted when you're competing, it's like the absolute opposite. Like you're
Mm.
people are stuffing themselves so much it like hurts. They're like it actually hurts. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, but that's not enough carbs, right? If that's not the right number yet. I have to eat X amount of carbs in order to be able to have the energy to perform tomorrow.
Yeah.
Man, there's just
Yeah.
so much benefit. There's just so
Mm.
much benefit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like the Volek study, the muscle glycogen in the keto group and the carb loading group, exactly the same. You don't get any benefits. And you replace your glycogen on the fly when you're in ketosis, where they got to keep sucking down sugar gels and sugar water and crap like that,
Yeah.
you know.
And
So yeah, no.
you can't even do that in a cage. You can't
Mm.
have anything other than water in the corner. You're not allowed your sugar gels or
Oh,
electrolytes, none of
really?
that. It's just
Oh,
water.
good. Oh,
Yeah,
that's even a
legally.
bigger
Yeah.
advantage, dude. I mean, that's insane. Like that's huge. And then, and you do your weigh-in and you're not starved. You haven't cut 20 pounds in the last 5 days, so you're just toned, ripped, ready to go. And then you're drinking water as normal, eat a big ass steak, and then don't eat anything and until you like eat that dude for dinner the next day. And then yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, carve them
yeah,
up real nice.
yeah, exactly.
I like it. I like it. I like it. I
Yeah,
like it. It's
that's
fun.
awesome, man. All
Yeah,
right.
dude.
Well, thanks,
This
man.
has
Well,
been
I appreciate
great.
you doing this, and it's been awesome to talk to
Yeah.
you. And has anybody else in your gym been doing this? You were getting around, or have you just been meeting up with a bunch of skeptics so far?
It's pretty skeptical so far.
Hmm.
I've got one female fighter, and she's the one that's the most interested. She seems like she's the most receptive to all my crazy ideas.
Hmm.
Um, but she's actually she has a really high histamine response. So
Hmm.
like any drastic change kind of messes with her.
Hmm.
Um, weight cutting being one of them, even just the act of fighting, but like any like massive diet switch kind of messes with her. Right now she's on like a like kind of an elimination diet, trying to just like weed things out
Hmm.
and figure out exactly what her body can tolerate. But um she says that once I figure out weight cutting, then she's on board. But I just have
Yeah.
to figure out weight cutting. I just have to prove it. I just have to go and show her like, okay,
Yeah.
it's still possible. You can do it, and
Yeah.
maybe I cut less, because I'm not able to drop way down and then go back way back up. But that may not be all
But
the most
yeah.
beneficial thing either, right?
But if you're in the range for your fight, like let's say you want to fight at 155, right? And
Yeah,
that and you have a fight set with a dude at 155. There's
yeah.
no benefit to drop down to 140 and then come back up to 155, right? You want to be at
Yeah,
154.9,
no, it would.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we would nobody does that. Everybody
Yeah.
would try to get to 155. The thing is that, like, the week of the fight, 7 days
Hmm.
out from the fight, how I was operating before, 7 days out from the fight, I want to be 170.
Hmm.
And then I know that okay, I'm gonna be able to throughout the week I'll diet and reduce my food a little bit and like water loading and then cut the carbs, cut the salt, right? And cut the water and then PPP, do a little sauna or bath or whatever, and boom, I'm 155 and then I'm back to 170 again. A lot of these guys though,
Yeah.
like Islam, right?
Yeah.
Islam Makhachev, when I fought him, he was like 185 pounds in the cage,
Yeah,
right?
I've
So
heard.
like he was really big with it with this too. Like they cut a
Hmm.
lot of weight, right? So you're fighting a big person. So if
Hmm.
you are in the cage and you're fighting at 155, but you're weighing in at like you're in the cage at like 165, or a lot of the time I would end up at 167, 168, even when I was fighting when I was still burning sugar. Um, you're fighting some dude that's 185 pounds. So it's you're still a pretty big disadvantage. So if I was to say like
Um,
gradually go down to 155, I'm gonna make weight at 155, and then the next day I'm gonna be like 162. I'm not
um,
gonna there's not gonna be that big bounce back. So I'm gonna be a lot lighter than the person that I'm fighting. And this is why most people try to cut massive amounts of weight, and it's all half of it is like a weight cutting competition to see who can fight at the
yeah,
lowest weight. It's
yeah,
not very healthy, but
mm-mm,
the power that somebody can generate when they're heavier is significantly more than somebody that
mm-hmm,
is like, which is usually why, like, if you see any of the fights that happen in the UFC where somebody misses weight, right? They tried to make their weight and they missed it by 5 pounds or 6 pounds or 8 pounds, right? That guy almost always wins a fight. Almost
mm-hmm,
always. It's not always, but it's almost always wins the fight. So that's one thing that I'm gonna have to try to figure out is okay, can I figure out how to get down and then get back up again? Or am I going to have to sacrifice that, like, okay, I'm just going to be fighting bigger people and then create a method around that. Okay, because I'm fighting bigger people, I'm
mm-hmm.
going to do XYZ instead of like C, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was, back in the day, they didn't, like when I started, they still didn't have weight classes yet, and that was all like
Yeah, yeah.
King of Pancrase and the Shudo tournaments and all like that, the old school Japanese shit. That was all just unlimited, whatever. Just and Matt Hume was like a buck 65, and he was fighting like roided out, dudes in there, 250, 270 pound roid monsters, And he was just like, I don't, he was like, oh, wouldn't you get scared
Oh,
about this? And he's just like, I don't give a shit. They just move slower and there's more of them to break. Like, I'll fight a big guy. That sounds great. And he was good though, man. That guy had perfect technique. You remember
yeah,
Chemo?
yeah, yeah.
Chemo
Yeah, of
like
course.
fought.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So he trained at AMC when I was first there, and he was actually a really nice guy. Fucking huge, man. His calves were like the size of my waist. He was huge, man, huge. But he was like one of
Yeah,
these dudes. He was like 270 pounds, 275 pounds,
mhm.
just a monster. And he could not take Matt Hume down. Could not take him down with Matt standing there, not even like moving around, shuffling around, whatever. He stood there. This was right before the super fight with Ken Shamrock. Not everybody knows this, but
Mm,
he fought Ken Shamrock. I think it was a super fight in UFC 6. And Ken Shamrock's a really, really good wrestler. Matt fought him, I think, like 3 times
yeah,
back in the day. And so Matt was just like, hey, look, you know, Ken's a really good wrestler. Like you need to have your takedowns and your takedown defenses. Like this has to be on point. And he wasn't really happy with
yeah,
where he was at. So he's just like, okay, all right, take me down. And he just stood there. I mean, like literally just stood there, like hands by his side like this, standing straight up and down. He said, "Take me down." And first like Chemo went in like trying to bull rush him, but just went in to shoot like a double leg. Matt has this thing. He was a freestyle wrestling,
yeah,
national champion, and like he had this thing where he would where people would shoot in on him. He wouldn't even sprawl. He'd just pop his hits. It was like a gunshot, man. It was like a punch. It was like, the
yeah,
same sort
yeah.
of hip snap that you'd have when you're throwing like a right cross. He'd do that just with his hip and just smack them right in their shoulders. They're coming in, and he'd just time it perfectly. Sat Chemo on his ass, just standing there, just bam, just hip pop, right? And so he's just like, that's not good enough. He'd get up and do it again. And he did it again. Boom, sat him down. Now he's like really trying now. Boom, sit him down. Like, good go again. And we're all just like, and it's like, holy shit. Couldn't take him down. Could not take him down. And so I have
Mm,
no doubt. And
yeah,
you just have no problem. So there's definitely techniques. But the thing is that, like you're talking about, like, yeah, they're starting off bigger, they're cutting off a bunch of weight, but then they eat a whole bunch of carbs and junk and water and bullshit. So that weight that they're gaining back, they still have the same amount of lean body mass, you know? It's just that now
yeah,
they're slowed down with a bunch
yeah,
of water weight and carbs and bullshit and inflammation. You're not going to have that. So maybe you won't have like the physical weight, but they're going to have the lean body mass they already had. And yeah, I totally understand your point that
yeah,
they have more lean body mass and they're trying to super dehydrate down and then try to get back up to that and reinflate their muscles.
yeah.
But you can do a very similar thing. It is just again about dehydration. So you can dehydrate yourself when you're eating carbs, you just have more water weight. So it's not, so you weigh 170, but a lot of that's actually like just bullshit water weight and inflammation that you didn't want in the first place. It's not lean body mass. So now maybe you'll cut less
Uh,
water weight, but you'll have more lean body mass, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because like
yeah.
it's,
Okay. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So you have less bullshit to deal with. It's just lean, hard ass tissue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
can dehydrate that tissue and then reinflate that, you know. But if you're
Yeah.
not eating carbs in the first place, like as soon as you stop eating carbs, water's coming off, fat's coming off, weight's coming off. Okay, we've already done that. You've already done that part of it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
now, now you don't need to just fill back up with useless weight. Now you're just lean and light on your feet, and just every ounce of you is just, rock solid and ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
I
you'll
like
be
it.
fine. And the thing is too is
Yeah,
that
for sure.
like yeah, and you'll just feel so much better. I mean, fights are you know better than anybody. I mean, they're hectic. It's war, like anything can happen at any time, and anybody can take anybody out at any given, on any given day. But that's why you have to be on point. But like, you're gonna have an advantage mentally and now physically as well, even on top of your natural gifts that you already had, so it's I'm excited for you, man. I can't wait to see it.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely make sure that you're aware when it pops off, and it'll probably be
Yeah.
popping off quite probably in the summer. I'm hoping that by
Mm,
summer everything is in line and we get the right promotion and we get the right money and we get the right fight, which I don't
mm,
really care exactly who it is. It's just like finding somebody to fight me might be a little bit difficult just because of like what I've done. And most
mm,
people are just trying to get into the UFC, right? So they're like, oh no, I don't want to fight that guy because he might beat
mm.
me and then Dana White will hate me. And yeah, I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't need to do that anymore. I can fight whoever I want. And if I lose, I
Yeah.
don't care whatever. If I win, whatever, it's just for fun now. So yeah,
Yeah.
gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be a good time.
Awesome, man. Well, that's cool. All right, man. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. Do you have how do people follow you? How do people find you? Name your gym, where it's at, and give that a shout out again too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. So you can find us in person, right?
Mhm.
Tristar Gym West Coast in Burnaby, BC, 7759 Edmund Street. And you can find me on YouTube under Coach Kajan and also under the gym name Tristar Gym West Coast. Yes, the Tristar Gym, like Faraza Hobbies Tristar. I've got
Mhm.
my own branch here on the West Coast. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well, but my wife runs that account, so you won't actually be talking to me. It's Kajan Johnson official, and yeah, Instagram is just terrible for you, so I try to stay away from it and stick to the YouTube, and even that can be a rabbit hole. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my socials, and yeah, this has been really great, man. Thank you for making the time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate you taking time out and yeah, and talking with us and telling us your story. I think it's great, and I'm really excited to see your upcoming fights and see how your team responds to this and see what they say about it.
Yeah, yeah. We'll try to film the session where I
Mhm.
try to make them all vomit and puke and
Yeah.
and
Oh,
and run
dude,
to the
please. That would
ground.
be so
It would
great.
be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And even just doing that, just sprinting the straights and jogging the flat, that's
Yeah,
still one of the
yeah,
best workouts I've
yeah.
ever done. Sometimes I'll
It's
just
great.
redo that, getting back in, you know, it's obviously, when you're in a sprinting sport, like rugby or something like that, it's really applicable. But I mean, we were doing that, in fighters training too, man. My God, it just like when you push yourself like super past your own, sort of threshold, like you just come out the other side, like just, made out of steel, you just like tempers you in
Yeah,
in the heat.
yeah,
So yeah,
totally.
it's
Yeah.
fantastic. So yeah, maybe do a couple trial runs there and then bring
Yeah,
them out
yeah,
unsuspecting
for
and just
sure.
crush them.
For sure. Awesome, man. Thank you.
All right, man. You're very welcome. And thanks for coming on. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you watching that. Really hope that was helpful for any of you athletes or aspiring athletes out there. Really take this under consideration because it's absolute game changer. Kajan here, he's a top fighter and a top athlete in the world for decades, and proof positive. He's now um, 20 years down the chain, and he's saying, wow, I feel so good. I want to come back and start competing again. That's how powerful this is. I've noticed it firsthand myself in my 20s when I was doing this. Never felt better in my entire life. Couldn't figure out how to get back there until I was 38 years old, an old ass man, middle aged, shouldn't have had any sort of fight left in me. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks into it, I felt so good. I'm like, yep, screw it. I'm gonna go play some rugby and hit somebody. Like I just feel amazing. And I was going out there and just wrecking shop. So, this is something that's a huge, huge advantage. And and the people that think, oh, you have to do carb, you have to do this, that, and the other, they're just not going to be the ones getting the benefit of this. So this is your secret weapon, and you're going to be able to outcompete every single one of them because, you know, they're too scared to give it a try and actually see for themselves. So if you're brave enough to try it out, you're the one that's going to get the rewards. And we'll see you guys on the podium. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next
Yeah.
time. Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.